So to start, what exactly is trading? And no, not that kind of trading. In League of Legends, your starting pool of resources, i.e. your health and your mana for some champions, you can think of as your starting hand in something like poker. Now, as soon as you get to the poker table, you don't want to instantly all in and use all your poker chips available to you, because this obviously means your poker game is over and your night is ruined. Like poker, the goal is to gain resources while not losing as much in return. Good trading looks like this, where you take your opponent's health or resources, like mana, without losing as much yourself. But how do you actually do this? Well, a good start is to not miss your spells. One of the most important aspects of trading is your matchup. You'll see shortly after that horrible start, I commit to a long trade on this Aatrox, while tanking minions. Most of the time this isn't optimal, however, depending on matchup it can be. As you can see at the end of the trade here, it came out pretty even. However, because I'm playing Kled and will gain a large amount of health once I get my courage to 100, it's actually favoured my way. You can see here after next to no trading a minute down the track, I've suddenly got a health lead, despite the fact that he has Doran's shield while I have Doran's blade. But how do you know whether you should commit to long trades versus short trades? One of the easiest ways to figure this out is to look at your opponent's runes. If your opponent is running Conqueror or Lethal Tempo, this tells you that they want to commit to long trades. Whereas runes like Aftershock, Grasp, Fleet Footwork, Press the Attack, First Strike, Phase Rush, Electrocute or Comet all indicate that the opponent wants to go for short trades. So what this means is if you load into a game and you have Conqueror where your opponent has Press the Attack, you need to go for long trades to win and they need to go for short trades. But then what do you do if you both have the same rune? Well, this pretty much comes down to matchup knowledge. If you both have Conqueror and thus both want to be going for long trades, you then have to look at your particular champion's strengths. In this example, Kled being stronger early game compared to Aatrox's mid to late game spikes. Kled has a level 1 cooldown of 11 seconds on his Q, compared to Aatrox's 14, which only actually starts the cooldown after he uses his third Q. Kled also has the ability to use his dismounted Q in an all-in once he gets access to it, giving him another spell essentially. Because of this, Kled would prefer to do long trades while Aatrox only wants to trade when his Q is available. The next most important aspect of trading is sustain, both mana and health sustain. Most champs don't have a way to gain back mana except their base recovery, but a lot of champs have ways to gain back health. Champs like Set, Cho'Gath, Fiora, Garen and Kled all have ways to get back a lot of health in lane. So when you're playing these type of champions, doing an equal trade or even sometimes a slightly negative one actually benefits you. Something to keep in mind as well when you're versing these type of champions, that you have to win trades by a significant portion to make them actually worthwhile. Or find a way to mitigate their health regen. When versing Garen, for example, an occasional chip damage on him can stop his passive from healing. Or buying Bramble Vest when you're versing Fiora. This logic extends more than just champions though, as items and runes like Doran's Shield and Second Wind can drastically increase your sustain. The key takeaway here is that when you have higher sustain than your opponent, you want to trade more HP, because over time you'll gain back more HP than they will, giving you a significant health advantage. You need to be aware that this does have its downsides, as it leaves you low HP and vulnerable to ganks. Next we get into the timing of your trade. Don't forget about level 1 before minions spawn. So in this clip I entered a bush here to find an enemy Shen waiting there for me. Quick knowledge check from part 1 to see how to handle this. So first we want to hold tab and left click Shen. Doing this we can check his keystone and his starting item, as well as any current rune cooldowns like bone plating, which has a massive 55-second cooldown. Seeing Shen, or any character really, with Doran's Shield, Grasp and Bone Plating should tell you that they want a short trade, while having the Doran's Blade and Conqueror set up makes me more fit for long trading. Now that we have this in mind, let's jump back to our clip. If your champion has some sort of ability you can test the waters with, such as Kled Q, it's a good idea to check whether your opponent has Bone Plating. In this case I hit Shen and see no Bone Plating activation, which means he has Second Wind or Conditioning. We don't really have to think about playing around Second Wind, as we're not ranged top players. At least I hope we're not. Anyways, now that we don't have to worry about the Bone Plating cooldown, we can be a bit more free with the trading. Since I just got some free damage on Shen, he wants to trade back with his grass proc and passive. And since I've got nothing but auto attacks to deal with his Q, passive and grass proc, backing off is the best play. After winning a trade, hitting your opponent with the mandatory rage bait emote is crucial to the process. All jokes aside, if you've done this, you've successfully scoped out your lane opponent. Now it's time for the real work to begin. So when timing your trades, you should always focus on the minion wave. You want to initiate trades when your opponent has minions that he needs to kill while you don't. So right here you can see there's 2 minions that I need to last hit. Shen doesn't have any minions, so he tries to initiate a trade. This forces me to choose between last hitting or trading back to get a neutral trade. Personally, I almost always forgo the minions in favor of getting a good trade, and I recommend you do the same. This is because if you instead choose to take the minions and don't trade, it could result in you getting zoned from minions or having to take a bad recall, in result losing more minions than you initially would have. Like we spoke about earlier, I want to extend this trade as long as I can, whereas Shen is backing off and trying to keep it as short as possible. Both parties played pretty well here. Shen managed to get out and I managed to extend the trade fairly well. That's why the trade ended up fairly neutral. Ideally, Shen would want the trade to be a little bit shorter and I'd want it to be a little bit longer. However, because of my passive and the extra sustain I have, I'm going to come out winning from this trade. As you can see, a few minutes down the track, I'm roughly 200 HP ahead of Shen now. So what do you actually do with the health leads that you get? So there's 3 main things to do with health leads. The first thing, and most obvious, is just to kill your opponent. The second is to force your opponent off wave, XP and gold. And the third is to freeze or slow push to set up kills or a good recall. I'll be covering freezing and slow pushing in a further episode, so stay tuned for that. This here is a pretty common situation that will happen with trading, especially when you're aggressively trading early on. You can see here the Gwen has a lot more minions than I do because I've been focusing on hitting her rather than the minions. This naturally results in her getting level 2 first. There's a situation I come across very often in my games when, in reality, I could be getting push lead. The thing about this though, and why I like to do it, is because I actually have a health lead even though she's level 2 and I'm level 1. This baits my opponent to try and kill me on level 2 power spike like they've been taught many times, which can result in a free kill if you know what you're doing and pay attention to level up timers. You can see while this fight is very close, I know that if I hit one more minion I'll get the level up, so I can flash past her Q and hit that last melee. This resulted in a kill which I was nearly 200 health above her regardless. Now that we got the kill out of the way, the next thing you can do is to set up a nice recall. This works especially well if you have Ignite versus someone with Teleport, as they will be able to teleport back with full health and you'll get a nice recall, not missing much. You can see here I chunked Aatrox pretty bad and force him to use flash or die. In this situation, you should almost always try and dive your opponent. This is because if you equal trade, it's actually positive for you because they lose all their minion XP and gold from that wave, which is one of the things I talked about to do with the health lead, which we'll be getting to. In this clip, however, you'll notice Aatrox starts walking away the second I walk up, which is smart of him. In lower elo games, 99% of the time this Aatrox would never make that play, so the right play would be to dive him and trade. However, since he just leveled up from XP and did the right play of walking away, now it's time to do a recall. The best thing about forcing the wave into his tower and then doing a recall is that the wave is now stuck where it is. This means Aatrox is torn between 2 choices, back and TP. If he doesn't have TP, he needs to back and lose quite a lot of minions, or stay in lane with a significant amount of health down on me when I get back. You'll see this Aatrox is forced to stay in lane for quite some time, pushing a couple waves, which means I can walk back to lane and don't have to waste my TP. This is especially effective if you're running Ignite and you need to be setting up your waves like this all the time so you don't lose much on your backs. Now with this huge health and item lead that I have, he's forced to back and can't actually make a play off this big wave he's created. So I get to farm it for free, no worries. You'll notice after this, when Aatrox gets back in lane, my wave is doing the same thing his was earlier, bouncing back to him. At this point, he should be playing really safe and not walking up. But if your laner ever walks up, always try to hard trade into them, because you're pushing a big wave into their tower and can potentially set up a dive. In this clip though, I managed to just run this Aatrox down, and there wasn't much you could do about it, especially considering the fact that I had a flash advantage from earlier, whereas he didn't. The last thing to do is just to straight up dive your opponent. If you have the skills and have practiced enough, this is the most punishing thing you can possibly do in top lane. As you can see here, I've just secured my health lead, and now it's time to set up the dive. A lot of the time, if you're playing some aggressive top laner like Kled or Darius, you can do a lot more damage than people anticipate before the turret takes you out. You can see this Nasus gets absolutely obliterated from like 75% health. If you're in lower elo or just beginning to practice tower diving, I suggest getting them to around the 3rd HP, if not a little bit lower, before you start doing this. Anyways, that's all I've got for this video. I'd appreciate the like and sub if this helped you out. Stay tuned for my next video coming soon, which will be about wave control. And thanks for watching.
Always fight, never quit, do it right, play the game, win it life, have no shame, there's no time, feel the pain, live the grind, I could change, in my mind, pick a lane, commit and climb, the only way to win it life, I never miss that fact.